What if the person you're paying to fix your mental health is actually making it worse? I know that sounds wild. Like, you go to therapy to get your shit together, right? You're paying $150, $200, sometimes even $300 a session to sit on some couch and finally feel heard. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Not every therapist out there is actually helping you. Some of them are doing real damage. And the scariest part? You might not even realize it's happening, because that's literally what gaslighting does. It messes with your sense of reality so bad that you start thinking you're the problem. If you've ever walked out of a therapy session feeling worse than when you walked in, this video is for you. Stay till the end, because I'm going to break down 5 major red flags with real stories that'll help you figure out if your therapist is actually healing you or low-key playing games with your head. Real quick, before we get into it, let's talk numbers, because this isn't some fringe thing. Over 41 million Americans are currently in some form of therapy or mental health treatment. And studies, actual published research, show that roughly 1 in 10 therapy clients experience what's called therapeutic harm. That's not just it didn't work, that's it made things worse. That's being gaslit, manipulated, or straight up dismissed by someone who is supposed to have your back. And look, I'm not here to trash the therapy industry. Most therapists are genuinely amazing humans doing incredible work. But some are not, and you deserve to know the difference. A bad therapist doesn't just waste your time. They can set your healing back by years. All right, let's get into it. Red flag number 1. Okay, so imagine this. You walk into your session completely wrecked. You're crying, you're overwhelmed. You tell your therapist,
I feel like I'm failing at everything.
And they look at you and say,
well, you're probably just being too hard on yourself. Have you tried gratitude journaling?
That's a red flag, y'all. A good therapist doesn't just slap a Band-Aid on your pain. They sit in it with you. They don't rush to fix you or dismiss what you're feeling. When a therapist keeps minimizing your emotions, that's not therapy. That's toxic positivity with a license. Let me give you a real example of this. Sarah is 27 years old from Chicago. She lost her job and was dealing with severe anxiety, so she started seeing a therapist, someone she trusted to help her. But every single session, her therapist would say,
but think about how lucky you are. You have your health.
Every single time. And here's what happened to Sarah. She started believing her problems weren't even valid. She stopped bringing up the real stuff because she already knew what was coming, just another positive spin. She was basically silenced by the one person who was supposed to help her. That's not therapy, that's harm. There's a difference between encouragement and toxic positivity. A good therapist will first validate what you're feeling. They'll say, that sounds incredibly hard, before anything else. Not flip it into a feel-good moment. What Sarah experienced has a name. It's called being gaslit into silence. This one's low-key wild because it's so subtle. You're mid-sentence talking about your relationship drama, and suddenly your therapist goes,
oh wow, that reminds me of when I was going through my divorce.
And then, 20 minutes pass, and somehow y'all are deep in your therapist's personal life. This is called countertransference gone wrong. A therapist occasionally sharing a tiny bit of personal experience to build connection? Normal. But if they're regularly hijacking your session to talk about their own stuff, sis, you are paying to be heard, not to be their therapist. Let's break this down with a real-life example. Marcus is 34 years old, from Atlanta, spent 6 months in therapy for PTSD from a car accident. He said, my therapist would always end up talking about his own fears and anxiety. I felt guilty leaving, like I owed him something. Marcus was emotionally taking care of his therapist. That is a complete role reversal, and it's a major ethical violation. So you've been feeling meh about therapy for a while. It doesn't feel like it's working. You tell your therapist,
hey, I'm thinking about maybe seeing someone else.
And they hit you with,
if you quit now, you'll just be running from your problems. That's your avoidance pattern showing up.
that's manipulative as heck. You have every right to switch therapists without it being framed as a psychological flaw. A good therapist will support your autonomy, even if that means you leave. If your therapist is guilt-tripping you into staying, that's a power play, not therapy. Here's a real example of this happening. Jessica, 31, from Houston, stayed with her therapist for 2 years despite making zero progress. Every time she mentioned leaving, her therapist said,
"You're not ready to leave. Your abandonment issues are surfacing."
Jessica later found out this is a known manipulation. She finally switched, and within 3 months with a new therapist, she made more progress than in those 2 years combined. Whether it's religion, politics, diet, relationships, a therapist's job is to help you figure out your values, not to convert you to theirs. If your therapist is regularly suggesting things like, "Have you considered going to church?" or "Your problem is you don't eat clean," that's a yikes from me, dog. This is called values imposition, and it is a violation of basic therapeutic ethics. Your therapist's job is to be a neutral, non-judgmental space. The moment they start pushing their worldview on you, they've crossed a line. Let's break this down with a real-life example. David, 25, from rural Ohio, went to therapy dealing with his sexuality. His therapist kept making comments like, "Have you prayed about this?" and suggested that his feelings were a phase. David felt more shame walking out than when he walked in. That is not therapy. That's harm dressed up in a therapist's chair. Okay, look. Sometimes therapy is supposed to feel uncomfortable. Healing isn't always pretty. But there's a difference between productive discomfort and just feeling crushed every single week. If you consistently leave sessions feeling more hopeless, more confused, or more ashamed, and you bring it up and your therapist brushes it off or blames you, that's a red flag the size of Texas. A good therapist regularly checks in. How are you feeling about our progress? They adjust. They're curious about your experience. They don't ghost your feedback. Okay, so if any of this hit different for you, first, I want you to know you are not crazy. Your gut is probably right. And recognizing this is the first step. Here's what you can actually do. 1. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. You are allowed to question your therapist. 2. You can literally interview a new therapist before committing. Most offer a free 15-minute consult. Use it. Ask them, how do you handle it if a client feels worse after sessions? A good therapist will love that question. 3. If you experienced real harm, you can report a therapist to your state's licensing board. This is real. It matters. Don't just let it slide. And 4, switching therapists is not failure. It's advocating for yourself. That is literally what therapy is supposed to teach you to do. Finding the right therapist is like dating. Sometimes you gotta kiss a few frogs before you find the one that actually helps you heal. All right, real talk. If this video made you think twice about your own therapy experience, drop a comment below. I actually read every single one. Tell me, have you ever experienced a red flag in therapy? Or maybe you had an amazing therapist who changed your life. Spill the tea. And if you found this helpful, please share it with someone you know who's in therapy, because this is the kind of stuff they don't teach you, and people deserve to know their rights.